What's up, people? I know you saw the title of the video and you want to dive right into how it is you're going to close your first wholesale deal, even if your pockets are full of lint, even if you got butterflies, moths, and all kind of corrosion flying out of your pocket and no dollars. Let's get into it. First of all, I'm Joshua Jones. I own Gateway Realty Group as well as Gateway Wholesale Academy. Welcome to the channel. Do me a favor before we dive in, click that like button, subscribe to the channel, just so we can help the algorithm reach more people just like you who are wanting to close their first wholesale deal ASAP, right? So I want to dive right into this thing because I know for many of you, and it's different for everyone, but I'm sure many of you have kind of been riding the lines of the traditional methods of wholesaling, right? You find a property, you get it under contract, whether that be by driving for dollars, pulling lists, bandit signs, cold calling, whatever it is, right? And then you hope that some way, shape, form, or fashion, you will be in a position to find a buyer for that deal. Here's what I want to do. I want to put some guarantees in your pocket. I want to guarantee that you have a buyer for every deal that you find. I want to guarantee that you're in a position where you can make more per deal than most wholesalers in the business right now. And I want to put a guarantee in place that the strategy that I'm about to talk to you about is just about foolproof, right? So stick around to the end of the video so that you can make sure you get all the details on this process, and that you're not missing anything when it comes to you closing your first wholesale deal with no money out of pocket. All right. So this is for beginners. Let's dispel a few misconceptions that are commonly being spread around the world of real estate, right? Number one thing that comes up is money. Do I need money to invest in real estate? Well, no, we need to know people with money, right? We don't need to have the money in our own pockets. We just need to be able to directly connect with people who do have the funds necessary to help us get paid. All right. So the second biggest misconception is license. Do I need a license? No, you do not need a license. You do not need to be an agent in order for you to close deals in real estate, right? Wholesaling is one of the blessings that I feel like came about, and it's been happening for a really long time. But you do not need a license in order for you to do this, right? And then as far as credit, I know that kind of ties into money. No, you definitely don't need good credit. I started this business with a credit score of like 400 and something, right? So you don't need great credit in order for you to do this business. You don't even need good credit to do this business, right? You should use the money you make from this to repair your credit, if I was to say anything. Okay. So I want to dive into this strategy because, like I mentioned, I know a lot of you have been riding the lines of the traditional methods of wholesaling, and you may have begun to realize that more deals fall through than what people talk about, right? It's a bit more difficult to find buyers when you are getting these deals than what people are talking about. And it could be attributed to a couple of different variables. Maybe you're finding the deals in the wrong area. Maybe your formulas are causing you to lock the deals up too high. But I want to put some things in place today that I feel like are going to be beneficial to you being able to weed through the traffic and do this a lot better and a lot differently than most of the people. And what I'm talking about here, people, is what we call reverse wholesaling. Okay. Now, I know it may be a term you've heard, right? But you may not be exercising it. And I'm just here today to tell you this is definitely something you need to be using. The real estate market is changing. Most people who get started in real estate, I think it's like 85 or 87%, don't make it beyond their first year, let alone their first 5 to 10 years. It's just one of those things where you take a bunch of consistent action in one direction and you don't get the results that you're looking for. Or you listen to 50,000 people tell you how to wholesale real estate, and then you find yourself with analysis paralysis and you don't know where to start. Don't do any of those things. You don't even have to listen to me if you don't want to. But if you are here listening, it is because you want to be able to close deals consistently and you want to be able to do it at a high level. Okay. But we're still talking about your first deal. So when it comes to reverse wholesaling, I know traditionally you're taught to find the property first. And so in this case, we're not going to do that because we don't want to make the mistake of potentially getting a property under contract that does not make sense for an end buyer. We want to start off by talking to buyers first. And I would say the most important thing, because it is easier to talk to buyers than it is to sellers, but the most important thing is for you to be in a space or a headspace where you desire to build relationships with these buyers. You do not want to be the person that comes across as the one and done person. There's a lot of people wholesaling real estate. There's a lot of people flipping. There's a lot of people, buying rentals. But there's also a lot of people who are making a bad name for investors. You do not want to come across as one of those individuals. And so your mindset has to be around building relationships. You have to be in that headspace because that is going to be the one tool that's going to keep you making money in this business, especially utilizing this strategy. So, if we're going to talk to buyers first, we want to be in the mindset that I want to get to know you. I want to understand how you're spending your money, where you're spending your money, what needs to be in place for you to be more comfortable spending, 60, 70, 80, 100, $200,000, right? And there's a couple of different ways to find buyers that are actively investing and free at that. I know you can pull a list from PropStream, you can pull a list from Batch Leads, but you're going to pay to skip trace it, and you're going to pay for those platforms. Some are $99 a month, some could cost more depending on the features you want, right? But if we're looking at free and easy and convenient, I would go towards a Facebook group, right? And it's as easy as you jumping on Facebook, typing in investor groups slash, market, investor groups, whatever market that is, with a zip code, investor group, whatever, right? And you're going to get a list of groups that you can join. And I would say join as many of those groups as you possibly can. And it may take about a day or so for the admin to admit you into the group. But once you're in the group, you can go to the little search icon in the right hand corner, which I have a video on this on my, or it should be up, or it will be up on my Instagram and my TikTok page. But it is going to be highlighting how to walk through that process step by step. But what you want to do is click that little search button, the little um, magnifying glass, and type in cash buyers. And what you're going to see populate is a ton of posts where people have already gone in and written posts like, hey, looking for cash buyers in this zip code, or looking for cash buyers in this neighborhood or in this area. And you're going to see a ton of responses. Some have 20, 30, 100, 1,000 responses with email addresses saying, hey, I'm interested. You want to start the process of reaching out to the people who have provided their information. All right. And you want to add them to a Google spreadsheet as you begin the conversations with those individuals. And the reason you want to reach out to them and not just put them on your list is because you want to make sure that they are still actively buying in the area. Because you could potentially run into a post that's a year old and you only got 2 buyers on that list that are still actively investing. Again, I told you earlier that about 85 to 87% of people don't make it in the world of real estate, due to them giving up or just not making the money that they thought they would see, or whatever the case is. So, and you're working with a small percentage of people who are still around if a post is more than a year old. But some of these posts are pretty dated. But that does not mean that these investors are not still investing. I'm just going to give you the truth. I know many people aren't going to tell you that. They're going to tell you just put them on your list and then start marketing your properties to them. I would not do that at all. But just start a conversation. And again, I want you to be in the mindset of building relationships. So when I'm starting a conversation, it's, hey, I just wanted to make sure I got to know you, a bit more so that I could make sure I offer you the most quality deals. I don't want to bring you anything that you don't want. And I learned this because I had reached out into a group. I was marketing a property, and a guy reached out to me and said, hey, man, me and you can make a bunch of money together, but we're only going to make a bunch of money together if it makes sense. And so I just started chatting with him like, okay, so what makes sense for you? What's your buyer criteria? Like, what makes it a no-brainer for you to purchase a deal? And he gave me all of his buyer criteria, what he was willing to spend, where he wanted his properties to be. And surprisingly enough, buyers are fairly picky about where their money goes and how much of it they want to spend at any given time. So it would be wise for you to know this information and not enter a situation as a one and done, right? And so I started putting this information into a spreadsheet with him, and I just kept doing that with every buyer. Every buyer that I would get that information. Ta 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 ta. Okay, he wants 3 2s. He's only looking for things 1,900 square feet and up. He wants anything that's built after 1950. He's not wanting to spend more than $200,000, right? Get that information, put it in the spreadsheet. Now I know if I find a property that fits that criteria, I have a buyer, guaranteed 100%, right? So I do that, and I want to build that list as long and as far as I possibly can. And there's a reason I didn't talk about scripts, because you don't need them. You really just need to understand you're talking to another human being just like you. I get the nerves and all of that thing, but you just got to figure out what fear weighs more: the fear of the buyer saying they don't want to work with you, or the fear of you being broke for the rest of your life. You have to decide which of those makes the most sense for you. So I would get that information and build out that spreadsheet. I would shoot for 1,000 names. Right. That doesn't mean you're going to get 1,000 in one market, but I would shoot for 1,000 names if I could. Okay. And once I got those 1,000 names, I would begin the process of identifying how many times I'm seeing any one market. And I usually weigh it based on like who had the most. So if I'm dealing by zip codes, then I'm saying, okay, out of the buyers that I've brought into this spreadsheet, I see that 9 of them like this zip code, 20 of them like this zip code. And I'm going to start my search for properties in the areas where I have the most buying potential. Right. And so, how are we going to find properties? Well, let's talk about the hottest list first, right? Which are going to be lists like your government list. These are simple. Don't complicate this at all, right? So if we're thinking government list, let's talk about something like water shutoff list, right? Call your local water department and tell them you want a list of all the water shutoffs in the such and such zip code or the such and such area. And what's going to happen is they're going to either ask you an email or give you a website that you can visit and get or acquire that information. Okay. And you get that information and you can skip trace those addresses using truepeoplesearch.com. Okay. Free, does not cost you a dime. So you got a list for free and you can skip trace for free. Now, and so another list is going to be let's say code violations, right? Code violations are another list where the grass is overgrown, the brush is overgrown, and I mean it's just looks a mess. It's an eyesore to the community. And you can call your local code violation department and get a list from them. Some hotter lists are definitely going to be like a probate list. It's going to be like piping hot. You do want to be a bit more sensitive to their situation, given the fact that someone just passed. So you don't want to be, rushing in the door. Again, your mindset should always be building relationships. You don't want to be rushing in the door saying, "Hey, you want to sell that property? I know somebody just passed," or whatever. You don't want to be doing that, right? You definitely want to be more sensitive to their needs and situation because those deals could take a little bit longer. For example, I'm currently working on a probate deal in Montgomery, Alabama, and a little bit of a rougher side of town, but working on a probate deal where the sibling's mother just passed and there's like 8 siblings, right? So I know they got to run down siblings, they got to appoint an executor, things of that nature, in order for me to be able to get what I need to close that probate deal. So I know that deal would not close at least before the start of next year, or even get close to closing before the start of next year with the holidays and everything coming up. So you just want to be a little bit more sensitive and be aware that it may take a little bit longer for that deal to actually transact than others. So you got water shutoff list, you got code violation list, you have probate list, you have pre-foreclosure lists you can use, that are great lists for you to use because, of course, they're in some type of financial constraint at the present moment. But all of these lists can be free for you. All right. A tax lien list. Think about it. They can't pay taxes. Something could definitely be going on. And you may run across investors that have properties that can't pay taxes. These sellers are going to vary, right? The types of sellers you run across are going to vary, but these are all really hot lists that would make absolute sense for you to go after first because they require a little bit more work to get. Right. So most people aren't going to want to spend the time calling the local county. They're not going to want to go down there and talk to those individuals. They're not going to want to wait on an email. They want things quick. They want them fast. And so everybody's utilizing software to pull lists. And if you know something's harder to get, that means there's less competition and that means it's a bigger advantage for you. So I would just utilize all of those lists as possible, get as many addresses and names as possible, and utilize True People Search. If you don't have the money, definitely go truepeoplesearch.com and skip trace those names for free. If you have a little money to spend, there are platforms out there that could potentially skip trace for as little as 3 cents. If I'm not mistaken, There are driving for dollar apps that are now offering free skip tracing if you have a little money. I would only utilize software if I've already closed 2 to 3 deals. I would not start spending money on software right off the bat. I made that mistake, and then I found myself paying anywhere between $1,500 and $2,500 a month, just to keep the software alive, and I wasn't bringing that money back in on closed deals. So it does not make sense until you've developed some type of consistent flow. But there are platforms out there that make this extremely easy for you. Outside of government list, I mean, if you're dealing in your local community, driving for dollars is always the best way, because you're really like the first eyeballs on a distress situation, and you have an opportunity to either knock on that door or, use truepeoplesearch.com to skip trace that name on the spot, get that information, and call. Those are some great deals you're going to find driving for dollars. And what you're really looking for is you're looking for rundown properties. You're looking for um, overgrown brush. You're looking for mailbox full of mail, roof caving in, etc. Those are just some things you would be looking for to be able to identify that the property was, in a mess or in shambles, or potentially would make for a great deal. So driving for dollars works. There are some other strategies that have worked well for me, like bandit signs work really well if you're trying to generate inbound traffic, and want people actually calling you who want to sell their property, because one thing's for certain: if they call you, they want to sell. So it makes the conversation with them a lot more simplistic, in that sense. So you want to have that conversation with them. And I don't want to talk scripts again. I really want to narrow it down to 4 things you're looking to identify when speaking with any seller. And you don't have to be fearful of these conversations. Don't be in the headspace where you feel like you have to convince someone to sell you their property. They either want to sell you their property or they don't. Just keep that in mind. Move on to the next person. Don't waste time right there. A lot of people out here selling sales courses on cold calling. That is foolish to me when it comes to real estate. People aren't going to be convinced to sell you their property. Now, you may have somebody who's thinking about selling and needs a little nudge over the table. That's different, but you're not going to convince a person that flat out tells you no to sell you their property. And they may circle back around, but don't waste your time. But the 4 things that you want to identify are going to be their motivation. Why is it that they want to sell the property? Right? Is it have they gone through a divorce? Are they downsizing because they're empty nesters now? Are they in distress in some capacity? And of course, the more of those things that you can stack together, the more likely that seller is to sell you their property for an all cash offer. Right. So if you can stack them being behind on their mortgage with them being behind on taxes, and also they've gone through a divorce and things of that nature, then you know that the motivation is extremely high, right? The second thing that you're wanting to identify is the time. How long is it before that foreclosure goes through? How long is it before they need to move? How long is it that they need to sell that property and be on to their next destination? You want to get an understanding of that, because that is going to determine a few things for you, like inspection periods, how long you actually have to make sure that the property closes, which in this case, you're in a winning situation because you found your buyers first. But if you're traditionally wholesaling, think about it. If somebody said they need a property sold in a week, think about how hard it is to find a buyer if you're doing this the traditional way, right? The third thing is going to be condition, the condition of the property. So when's the last time they done updates? Have they updated the kitchen, the bathrooms? We know those are the most important, right? Roof, AC, the foundation. Like, I need to get an idea of what is the condition of the home, because that is going to help me determine what is the price that we offer. And you really want to boil it down to a couple of things when you're talking to sellers, because they're going to some of them are outrageous with what it is they're expecting to get as far as price, which is your 4th thing. But you really want to get an idea of the condition of the property, because you want them to understand that that's going to determine how quickly or slowly this property sells, right? If you're wanting an outrageous number for a property that needs a ton of work, then the likelihood of you selling that property quickly isn't going to work. If they want to sell it in 2 weeks, it's not going to work, right? Because you got to make this make sense for the end buyers. You have to make this make sense. And so you're in a position, as you identify the condition of the property, the timing, their motivation, you're weaponizing your offer, right? You're gearing up an offer that should be a no-brainer for them in terms of money in pocket, or bills paid, or them moving on with their lives, saving their credit. Like, there's tons of different things you can throw out there, and you're solidifying a deal for your buyer as well as you getting paid. Okay, so you find out those 4 things: motivation, right, time, condition, and price. And you have those now in your pocket as far as the seller. Once you get them to agree to a price. Now, there's a couple of different ways to determine what your max allowable offer should be. You may have heard the term MAO, or max allowable offer. I still love the 70% rule. I still love, 70% minus the ARV, minus the repairs, minus my assignment fee determines my max allowable offer. Um, but I know for some areas and markets, it can be as easy as you just simply understanding what the ARV is and discounting that property 30 to 40%, right? And that should give you around the figure you would get with that 70% formula. Of course, the goal is to get the property under contract for as low of a number as possible. But keep in mind too, like you want to still make sure you take care of the seller, right? You don't want the seller to feel burned. You don't want to put them in a position where they're wanting to back out of the deal. So you want to make sure you're taking care of whatever their immediate need is. Okay. And I know a lot of times everybody tell you to get in and get out, but I would just venture to say, have a heart. If they owe $10,000 to pay off, back taxes, don't offer them 15,000, putting $5,000 in their pocket when you know you could easily sell that property for 80 grand, right? Give them another 10, give them another 20, right? Like, make it make sense for them, and don't. I, I guess we are still using their situation against them, but just don't be malicious. That's the main thing that I'm saying. Don't go out there and just be beating people across the head. And um, you know, yeah, I would just say that. Have a heart, all right? Still make your money, but have a heart. That's all I'm saying. So you want to get the property under contract for as little money as possible, with it making sense for both the seller and the buyer. Now, in terms of formulas and things like that, I'm not going to go into too much detail on this particular training, for that, but I do have other trainings that are going to highlight, if they should, most some of them may already be posted, but I'll also be doing other trainings in the future. And if comment below the video, I'll be more than happy to answer your questions personally as well. But once you calculate that offer, you want them to sign what we call a purchase and sale agreement. All right. Now, a purchase and sale agreement gives you equitable interest in that property. You now have the ability to either buy that property yourself or sell that property or the interest in that property to someone else. Okay. So they'll sign the contract for the agreed upon amount. And then now you'll take that property and begin to market it to your cash buyers list. All right. Now, keep in mind, you've already built this list. You're already searching and finding properties in the areas that these investors are willing to invest. So it's not going to take you a long time to get a hit or two on that property. Now, if you have a pretty decent size list, I would give it a couple of days, maybe a week, so that you could really see who's making the best offers on that property. Because even though you're putting it out there at a $20,000, $30,000 markup, you also want to give time to see if somebody's willing to pay you more, right? Now, I wouldn't extend it too long, but I would extend it long enough to be able to make the best decision for how much money I'm willing to make on this deal. All right. And so after you get a buyer that agrees to go through with the closing, another thing that I would do is I would I'm sorry, the last thing I would do is have them sign what we call a assignment of contract. Now, that assignment of contract is you transferring your equitable interest in the property to the now buyer of that property. So now they take your place in purchasing that property and everybody wins. All right. And so with the $20,000, $30,000 markup, you know that you stand to make that amount. The seller gets paid what it is that they're getting paid. And of course, the buyer is now going to receive the property and the title for that property. Once those two documents are signed, you want to find a title company. Now, a title company can be pretty much, you want the title company in that area, but there aren't many title companies that I've run across that don't understand what a wholesale deal is. I still vet new title companies, simply because I don't want to run the risk of me not getting paid. And what I mean by that is I ask two very simple questions. One question is, have you ever closed a wholesale deal? The other question is, how many deals have you closed? So if in the last year they've done 5 or more deals, I mean, hey, just submit the documents, turn it in escrow, and you should be fine. If they say they've only done 1 deal or less, 3 deals or less, I might not mess with them, just because I don't want to run the risk of me, being in a position where I'm not getting paid for all the hard work that I've done to get this deal. I know the question is coming up in your mind right now about earnest money deposits. I'll be honest with you. I don't really ever have to worry about earnest money deposits in this situation because my buyer is going to pay a non-refundable earnest money deposit of $2,500 or more. All right. So if the seller ever asks me about earnest money, I'll talk about it. But if they don't ask me about earnest money, I don't even worry about it. And if they ask me about it and I talk about it, I usually let them know that that earnest money deposit will be in place around 72 hours after escrow is opened on the property. Right. So you really don't have to worry about it. If they want 200 or if they want 500, you really don't have to worry about the amount because I usually don't charge my cash buyers anything less than 2,500 EMD. Right. And it's non-refundable. So really doesn't matter in that sense. I do protect myself when it comes to my seller because I do make that a refundable deposit. That way, if the buyer does back out, I do get the entire 2,500. But I would, in that case, still have other buyers on deck because I've built a pretty substantial list in that particular market. So you now have that in escrow. The title company is going to run a title search. They're going to make sure that the title's clear. They're going to make sure that there are no liens on the property, things of that nature. They're going to contact the seller, the buyer, as well as yourself to get wire information, right? Where do you want your money sent? So you don't have to worry about getting paid or not getting paid. They're going to reach out to you, and then you also have a phone. So if it's been a week and you haven't heard anything, like feel free to reach out to the title company. I've had to do it, and I mean, it's not a headache for them to say, hey, yeah, they're just finishing up a few documents. Closing date's going to be on Friday, right? So don't panic if you got to reach out. Don't feel like they've forgotten about you or that you're not going to get paid. Just reach out and make the phone call and you should be fine. But once the closing date has been made, both parties will meet, sign the necessary documents, and your deal is done at that point. All right. So just keep in mind that you want to also keep your seller aware of what's going on. Although they're going to get that phone call from the title company, that may be the only phone call that they get from the title company. And if they have any issues, say the title company has any issues, they're going to contact you, right? So the best thing that you can do is just keep your buyer, your seller updated on the process. And I usually just reach out maybe once a week, like, hey, everything's looking good. Everything's on pace to close on time, depending on what inspection period I gave them, our close date I gave them, our close by date I gave them. Um, and I just keep them updated. And I just keep them updated. Any questions, they really aren't even concerned at all. They just appreciate the fact that you reached out because I have had situations, especially when I first started in this business, where I did not reach out to, my sellers and they were pretty ticked off thinking that the deal wasn't going through or that things weren't working. And some of them had even begun to already talk to other people about selling the property. So you just want to make sure you stay on top of things. You don't want your seller in a position where they're wanting to back out or not do business with you, or you don't want them in a position where they leave you a bad review, right? Reviews do hurt in this business. So you don't want to burn somebody in this business because then buyers and all type of other people won't want to deal with you, right? You don't want to create a bad rep. So when you are looking at the process of you getting your first deal, look at it from the way I just laid out for you. Finding your buyers first to ensure that you know where to begin the search for your property. As you know where to search for your property, then you can begin that hunt, right? You have the buying criteria, you know what they're looking for, and you can easily find properties in those particular areas and get deals done a lot quicker and a lot faster. So if you have any questions at all about this process, feel free to, drop a comment below the video. I do answer a lot of questions via my other platforms. So check out my Instagram page. That's gateway underscore WA. And my TikTok page is going to be Gateway Wholesale Academy, where I do answer a lot of the questions that I get, and I do offer a lot of feedback and step-by-step walkthroughs because I know there's a few things you may still have questions about, like calculating offers and things like that. But I want to give you a full breakdown of all of those things. But if you do the process the way that I'm telling you right now, a lot of those things will kind of take care of themselves. And you can trust me, it's going to make it a lot more simplistic for you versus you trying to go out and find those properties first and then hoping you find a buyer. So hopefully you found value in this video. Again, if you have not already done it, click the like, please subscribe, share the video with somebody. Even you may have a friend who's been talking about wholesaling who could help you out with this process. One of you can work the buyers in, the other can work the sellers in, and make this a no-brainer for the both of you. If any of you need help on this process, feel free to reach out and let me know. I do offer mentorship. And I am looking for a few more people. I would say around 5 people who are looking to make anywhere from 30 to, I'd say, 20 to $30,000 in the next